wandering in the wilderness and making the American people suffer needlessly, some Senate Democrats finally have stepped forward to end the pain. It appears to us this morning that our long national nightmare is finally coming to an end, and we're grateful for that. At least some Democrats now finally appear ready to do what Republicans and President Trump and millions of hardworking American people have been asking them to do for weeks. But as we said from the beginning, the people's government cannot be held hostage to further anyone's political agenda. That was never right.
Agendas on both sides, man.
Never produces anything. It never has, if you study history. And so here we are. I want to remind everybody this morning of another critical point that you've heard me here repeat over and over the last several weeks. It's something that I and Leader John Thune and President Trump and every Republican leader have all said repeatedly from the beginning. We have always been open to finding solutions to reduce the oppressive costs of health care under the Unaffordable Care Act. We just made clear that we would not and should not ever do that, that is, negotiate as hostages. And I've also reminded you here every morning that this president, Republicans have not just been talking about reducing costs and fraud and abuse in so many areas and in healthcare. We've been actually passing new laws to accomplish that urgent mission for the people, and we will continue to do so. So here's where we are by way of schedule, just so you know, you're following. And if you're not at home, if you're waking up to this good news this morning, the Senate's vote late last night, 60-40, opens the door now. The Senate is moving forward on an amended House CR, a continuing resolution, that will reopen the government until January 30th. Added to that are provisions to fully fund SNAP provisions through the end of the next fiscal year, which is September 2026. Guaranteed back pay for all federal
this will be an issue before the next election there for real. Okay.
Over the last several weeks. And it also includes passage of 3 appropriations bills, which we're grateful to be moving through the process. That is the Military Construction Veterans Affairs bill, it's the Agriculture bill, and the Legislative Branch bill. The Senate will be back in session this morning to finish their job, and we're certainly praying that they do. They'll need unanimous consent from all senators to fast-track their final vote. As you know, there are some procedural hurdles that one or more could throw in the way, but we certainly hope that they won't do that because so many people across this country are desperate for the government to reopen. At the very moment that they do that final vote, I will call all House members to return to Washington as quickly as possible. We'll give a 36-hour formal and official notice so that we can vote as soon as possible to pass the amended CR bill and get it to the president's desk. As you all know, and he said as recently as last night, I was with him, and he told the press, he said, we want to get the government open. He's very anxious to get the government reopened and to end the Schumer shutdown. We all are. With regard to the travel challenges, I spoke yesterday at some length with Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, my former colleague and good friend, and he lamented the serious situation that we have with air travel in the U.S. He's bent over backwards, as all members of the administration and the cabinet have done in all of their areas of jurisdiction, to try to keep the government working for the people and to mitigate the pain and the harm. But the problem we have with air travel is that our air traffic controllers are overworked and unpaid, and many of them have called in sick. That's a very stressful job and even more stressful exponentially when they're having trouble providing for their families. And so
can't pay your bill. I'm showing up to work.
Grinding to a halt in many places.
Fuck your flights.
And as of Sunday, nearly half of all domestic flights and U.S. flights were either canceled or delayed. And it's a very serious situation. So I'm saying that by way of reminder. I'm stating the obvious to all my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats in the House. You need to begin right now returning to the Hill. We have to do this as quickly as possible. Now, we look forward to the government reopening this week so Congress can get back to our regular legislative session. We have a lot of business to do, as you all know, and we will be working in earnest. There'll be long days and long nights here for the foreseeable future to make up for all this lost time that was imposed upon us. I want to close with something that's important. I think it's important to say that this is genuine. I mean this sincerely. We applaud the 7 Senate Democrats and 1 independent senator who did the right thing. They decided to put principle over their personal politics. And my urgent plea of all my colleagues in the House, and that means every Democrat in the House, is to think carefully, pray, and finally do the right thing. and help us to bring an end to the pain of the American people. This has gone on too long. Too many people have suffered, and it's long overdue. That's the update I wanted to give you this morning. There are probably lots of questions, but I'm going to get a lot of my own questions answered later today, so stay tuned for more. Thanks so much.
Damn, I can't even take no questions. Straight deuces. See, you got after 40 days of a shutdown, there's really no other conversation. Democrats finally came to a conclusion that, you know what, the Affordable Care Act stuff, I have to wait till next year. If you were on the stream last night, you know we were watching a little bit of Jasmine Crockett. I'm gonna go back there because it's really a fact of, you know, people finally get into a situation where they want to care. Maybe the elections woke some people up. Democrats said, you know what, hey, we either got this in the bag or things may not turn out the same next year. Mississippi was good. Some parts of the PSC in Georgia were good. But the biggest thing is some Americans just need some food. People need food on their counters or on their kitchens before Thanksgiving. And I think that's another thing knocking at the door. Like, this shutdown thing could get good, but let it go on for another 2 weeks. The week before Thanksgiving, people can't shop. That's what I think will really help bring some compromise to it. You don't have the crazy to get at it. So actually, what I'm gonna do is, if you saw last night, I have clips from that. Jasmine Crockett speaking here in Texas. I don't want to go all the way through that to be fair to the people who may be watching, but I'm gonna pick up where Gavin Newsom's at, because Newsom is basically campaigning for president now after Prop 50. So Prop 50 passed. They're gonna save some seats. Then they're gonna go at it. But we'll see what this is while I try to straighten up and get some more accurate news for today. But thank y'all for tapping in this morning, man. Day 41 of the shutdown.
It is good
it's
to
almost
be in
over.
Texas. Eat your heart out, Greg Abbott. Woo!
Shutdown's almost over, y'all.
Man. Listening to that lineup, I get why you say don't mess with Texas. But also don't poke the bear. Thank you, everybody, for... I love you, too.
Good morning, y'all. Good morning. Let me put the chat back up.
Thank you, guys. I came out here just to say those two words. Thank you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for showing up not just for yourselves, for each other, for the state, our nation, and the world we're trying to build. Thank you. Thank you for not giving into cynicism. Thank you for not giving into the fear and the anxiety that fills so many people. Thank you for being the antidote to that. Thank you for stepping up.
JS.
Thank you for stepping in.
Morning,
And
Pam.
thank you for inspiring a nation, Texas. Thank you for inspiring the state of California. Thank you for Proposition 50. Gene wasn't wrong. Gene wasn't wrong. You guys made this happen. You guys have awakened up our immune system. We're dealing with an invasive species by the name of Donald Trump.
That's crazy. It's crazy.
He is an historic president, however. Historically unpopular president. Under every key category. I mean, you can't even make this is hard to do. On every issue, on the economy, on tariffs, on immigration, on health care. Historically unpopular president. And he knows it. And he knows it. Why else? Why else did he make that call to your governor? Why else did he feel the need to rig the election before even one vote was cast? That's just weakness. Weakness masquerading as strength. That's Donald Trump. And he had a very bad night on Tuesday. Bad night. And he did because all of you. You're showing up. We talk that No Kings rally. We talk about patriotism. You talk about why the founding fathers lived and died. You talk about why we're all here. The best of the Roman Republic, best of Greek democracy, co-equal branches of government, popular sovereignty, the rule of law, not the rule of Don. And it's dawning on people all across the United States of America what's at stake. And you put a stake in the ground. People are showing up. They don't believe in crowns, thrones, no kings. And people all across this country are waking up because you had the courage months ago. Gene, his colleagues, had the courage to step up at a time when we were desperate for leadership. We were. I say it all the time, it's not what happens to us, it's how we respond to what happens to us. And you responded. You didn't roll over and you didn't give in. You stepped up and you traveled, as Gene said, all across the United States of America, and you woke us up. You didn't just have your back here. You had our back in the state of California. We were looking for a fight, not only that we can win, but a fight worth fighting for. And that is why I'm...
And the fight here the governor's talking about, as you know, is Prop 50 in California. That also, you have to realize the 5 seats in California will probably be wiped out when Indiana and North Carolina and other states do it. Again, I've said on the channel, North Carolina is considering redrawing their maps. And even though they have a Democratic governor, their constitution says the governor cannot veto the maps. So the legislature that's still Republican held is going to redraw the maps. So whatever California did to offset Texas will be done in North Carolina. But guess what? Governor Westmore Maryland said, you know what? It's time for us to look at our maps too. And all of a sudden, we're going to redraw these maps. No census, no new population. We're just going to cut it up by the 750 and call it a day by the data we have, which is great. Makes it competitive. But at the end of the day, they have a lot more states than Democrats do. So it'll really be a topsy-turvy back and forth. But what I want to go to is actually the Air Traffic Controller Union real quick. Since that was last night, I already have some good clips from Jasmine Crockett. I mean, people love Crockett more than Newsom for what it is. But let's hear what the Traffic Controllers Union has to say about the second week of going without pay in the midst of this government shutdown, on top of the 10% last week and the 20% reduction in certain airports. Let's tap in here, man.
All set? Okay. Thank you all for being here. So today marks the 41st day of a federal government shutdown, now the longest in American history. Today is also the 250th birthday of the United States Marine Corps and is the eve of Veterans Day. And on behalf of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association and someone who has proudly served 5 years in the United States Marine Corps, I want to personally thank our military veterans. And on behalf of a workforce comprised of approximately 30% veterans, we want to thank all of the men and women who are currently serving in our armed forces and who protect our freedom and keep us safe every day and deserve to be paid as well. Semper Fidelis to my devil dogs out there. Now with me today is Amy Lark, who has served 18 years in the FAA and is a longtime certified professional controller, as well as a traffic management specialist at Potomac Tracon. Also, Jonathan Misner, who has served 17 years in the FAA and is a controller at Manassas Tower. He is also a veteran and served 5 years in the United States Marine Corps and now as an air traffic controller. Happy birthday, Devil Dog. So, another title that I am honored to have earned is air traffic controller. With 22 years of experience at both the FAA, Tower, and en route, our thoughts remain now with all of those affected by the tragic accident of UPS 2976. This pain is felt across every air traffic control in the land. The crew, the family, and the friends of those who were lost were with you, and all of our controllers at Louisville Standiford Airport. But today, it benchmarks the first time in history that air traffic controllers and other aviation safety professionals we represent have now received 2 $0 paychecks, 41 days without pay. Controllers continue to show up and step up, despite working full-time during the shutdown and in many cases, mandatory overtime. Controllers continue to show up and step up for the American flying public and for each other. On behalf of myself and your NACA leadership, we see you. We thank you for your tireless commitment to safety of our national airspace system in the flying public. Your sacrifice and perseverance in the face of financial and emotional hardship are extraordinary. Now, air traffic control is one of the most mentally demanding and high consequence professions in the entire world. Every moment that we are at work, it requires everything we have: focus, judgment, decisiveness, perfect decision-making, thousands of times a shift. And what hangs in the balance is our responsibility to safety in order to prevent tragedy. Air traffic controllers must show up day in and day out, fully prepared to handle the stress, pressure,
I'm gonna get on
and the
your face
weight
like that. What's
of
up,
their
y'all?
responsibilities to the American flying public and their safety. For decades, air traffic controllers have held the line through staffing shortages, outdated equipment, hiring freezes, terrorist attacks on September 11th, pandemics, and every crisis that this country has lived through. They have kept their focus, their composure, and their commitment to safety.
They're going off, y'all.
They must focus on child care instead of traffic flows. Food for their families instead of runway separation. This is not politics. This is not ideology. This is the erosion of the safety margin the flying public never sees, but America relies on every single day. The added stress leads to fatigue. The fatigue has led to the erosion of safety and the increased risk every day that this shutdown drags on.
That's crazy.
If you want to know what the real fallout of this shutdown is, it's not a budget line. It is the smallest and the most dangerous shift of all. When the most disciplined safety workforce in America is forced to think about survival instead of public safety.
It's crazy.
This is the cost. This is not theoretical. It is happening now in real families, in real control rooms, in real time. Now, history will remember who is responsible for the shutdown. The public and media will debate who won. But we all know who carried the weight of it
Mitch?
and who has to pick up the pieces when it finally ends. It's us, the federal workforce that has been the rope in this game of tug of war. Now, let me be clear. Not just air traffic controllers and aviation safety professionals or federal employees. No American should ever be forced to work without a paycheck. To not
Let's go, man.
for the work that they have performed is un-American.
Simon's got to run for president
Failing
next,
to
man.
pay that workforce that keeps our sky safe is not acceptable, and it is not sustainable. We embrace the responsibility we hold and the trust
I feel you,
we are
Mitch.
given. This past weekend, air traffic controllers ensured that over 7.3 million passengers
That's crazy.
arrived on time,
Without pay.
arrived safely, and flying over 113,000 flights. And they all arrived safely at their destinations.
Without
They
pay.
did
That's
this
crazy.
despite continuing to operate with 3,800 fewer fully certified controllers than the system requires. And this is not a new issue.
That's crazy.
NACA has been advocating for increased controller staffing for more than a decade. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy recognized this concern and implemented plans to supercharge controller hiring and modernize the air traffic control system. And we've shared the same vision. We also thank him
Be right back,
for his
y'all.
outspoken support of air traffic controllers and for ending this shutdown. The effects of this shutdown have real consequences for hardworking, patriotic American workers. Last Friday, we delivered over 1,600 handwritten letters from our members to the congressional offices expressing the hardship that they are experiencing. These are not statistics. These are the lives of people who keep this country moving. One of our members recently moved from Alaska to Illinois and is in training at her new facility. Her husband of 20 years is a 5-time combat veteran who has 45 documented explosions and 7 direct hits in his service record. He returned from Iraq and Afghanistan with a traumatic brain injury diagnosis and 100% permanent and total service-related disability. Consequently, she is the single source of income for her family. Their son just graduated from Navy A school, 4th in his class, but they could not afford to attend his graduation. She's plagued by financial insecurity, and in addition to training at her new facility, she has sold plasma twice, started delivering for DoorDash, and recently took a part-time job on her regularly scheduled days off or day off. A NACA member in Nebraska pays a $2,800 copay for a specialty medication to treat his wife's autoimmune disorder and prevent it from becoming crippling. After a month without pay, he's unsure how he's going to pay for the basic living expenses and his wife's medical needs. We've heard from recent graduates of the air traffic control training in Oklahoma. They are resigning and cannot begin this challenging new career without a paycheck. We've heard from other air traffic controllers that are struggling to find ways to pay for gas and to get to and from work, while others are struggling to pay for childcare so they can go to work. These are real people. They're real Americans, and they are facing real problems. They deserve better, and they absolutely deserve their pay. The aviation safety professionals we represent are doing everything they can to continue to show up and deliver America's passengers and cargo safely to their destinations. Congress must act immediately and end the government shutdown and ensure that all individuals who have not been paid during this prolonged closure receive their compensation. Enough is enough. Now, thank you, and I'll be happy to take your questions along with Amy and Jonathan. Go ahead.
Even if Congress strikes a deal to end this government shutdown, how soon do you think we'll have enough air traffic controllers back working to avoid the cancellations and delays that we're seeing?
Well, air traffic controllers are showing up every day right now, day in and day out, doing an amazing job that they can. What we're going to have to find out is how many actually resigned, how many retired due to this shutdown, and truly started assessing all the different impacts that this shutdown's had. Yes.
Do you have a sense of how many recent graduates have resigned already?
We only have reports. I've talked to Secretary Duffy. We knew over last week it was 4 to 5 that had already resigned and growing by the day. Go ahead.
Hi, Ally here. I wanted to ask if obviously
The craziest thing for me is, and I'll stop this here because, you know, he's answering questions and whatnot. I'm going to go to Bernie Sanders and Schumer on the floor yesterday. The craziest thing to me is, when you take the politics out of it, both sides of the aisle were really complacent with these people not getting no paychecks. The federal workers, whether they were furloughed or not, these FAA agents, TSA, whoever, all the federal workers, when you think about it, right? The aviation people especially. Like, you have a very dangerous job. 7.8 million people traveling this weekend without pay. You organizing these flights. These people felt safe. After waiting, you know, typical hour or two, get there before your domestic flight or whatever, you're probably at the airport 8 hours. Like, I was stuck. I have to make some content. I was stuck this past week. I said it last night on a little bit of stream. I haven't posted since last Tuesday because I was traveling, right? I'm a real lobbyist, had real work to do. But I ended up getting stuck, had a blown out tire Saturday in Boca Raton. Had a blown out tire on the side of the turnpike. I was stuck on the side of the road for like 2.5 hours. Cool. That ended up making my trip like 10 hours to get back home to Jacksonville, right? Cool. People are waiting that long just to get in their flight, like at the airport, to fly wherever. So I probably, in that same blown out tire, same going to get new tires from Tire Kingdom, connected with my business partner, Global Billboards, Global Mobile Billboards. And then from there, trucking it from South Florida all the way to North Florida. I was still able to make it back in time instead of some of these people that were working, traveling these flights, working TSA, waiting for flights. It's like crazy. Like, I just personally, it wouldn't have blown out tire. feel more comfortable on the road than in the skies right now. So the shutdown's over, because it's a stressful job. And the stress of not being able to meet your bills on top of that has to be like heartbreaking. And it's like 40 days. It's crazy. Let's see what
Senator
Schumer
from
and Sanders
Vermont.
have to say. I know Bernie went off.
Understand that the way the process has been developed, it is impossible to delay the votes that are going to take place. And if that were not the case, that is certainly what I would do, because I think it is important that the American people fully understand what is being voted on today.
Talk to him, Bern.
Everybody in America knows that our current healthcare system is broken. It is dysfunctional. It is cruel. It is by far the most expensive healthcare system in the world.
Same thing he's been saying for 20 years now.
Healthcare system of any major country that does not guarantee healthcare to all people as a human right.
Same thing,
every
20
man,
years.
woman, and child. We are unique in that respect.
Remember, Bernie been saying the same thing since he ran for president in 2007. It's almost been 20 years of the same talking point. And there are a lot of progressives out here who want this universal health care, Medicare for all. And a part of them not realizing is it's still a long way to go to even have that conversation. Because Bernie's one man who's having the same talking points for 20 years, and it may take another 40 before we actually get there. But the way it's looking, people have to win some elections. But I don't buy that talking point, to be fair. I don't feel that is the main human right. Even though people will say it is, me personally, I don't.
Respect. And yet tonight, what this Senate is about to do is make a horrific situation even worse.
Talk to him,
So
Bern.
let's be clear what this vote is about. If this vote succeeds, over 20 million Americans are going to see at least a doubling in their premiums in the Affordable Care Act. In my state of Vermont and throughout this country, for certain groups of people, it will be a tripling and a quadrupling of their premiums. There are people who will now be paying 50% of their limited incomes for health care. Does anybody in the world think that makes sense? And if this resolution is passed tonight, we are on a pathway to throw 15 million Americans off of Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. 15 million. Our job is to create universal health care. Guarantee health care to every man, woman, and child, not throw 15 million people off the health care they have, low-income and working-class people. And my friends, know what you are voting on. Studies are out there that when you throw 15 million people off of health care, some 50,000 of our fellow Americans will die unnecessarily every single year. Anyone think that's funny? Something to laugh at? Something to just go past? I don't. 50,000 Americans die unnecessarily. Now, I know as part of this resolution that the majority leader is going to say, well, Democrats can put together their own bill, and it'll come to the floor here in the Senate for a vote. As everybody here knows, that is a totally meaningless gesture. You can get 100 votes here in the Senate. Won't mean anything because the House is not going to take it up, and the President of the United States certainly will not sign it. So, Mr. President, I hope that anybody here who is thinking of voting for this reconsiders, goes back home and talks to their constituents and asks them what it will mean if their health care premiums are doubled or tripled. Thank you, Mr. President.
The issue I'm having here, and I had to look it up myself while we're on stream, is that members of Congress who are on the Affordable Care Act or have to go through the ACA to get their healthcare system may pay, on average, $240 to $275 per month for the healthcare plan, a gold tier plan, right? While the unsubsidized citizen on the same average $200,000 salary will be paying close to $977 per month. The issue I have with the Affordable Care Act and a lot of the Democrats who want to push it, right, for the subsidies, is the fact of they're getting a $700 discount that the average person doesn't get. So now you're telling me that this is the best health care that we should fight for, when in reality, you're getting the best of this, a gold tier plan at $275 a month, which is really about $100 to $200 cheaper than me, right? But you're getting this at that plan. And when I was on an affordable care plan by mistake, I was on a bronze tier plan, paying $380 a month. I didn't know it was a bronze tier plan. All the rest of this happened. Like, all right, cool. I just signed up to sign up and had it go. And I'm like, damn. Well, there's more to the story. I don't want to tell too much, right? To be fair. But I'm paying $380 a month that somebody who's poor is paying $80 a year for, right? And even now, if I wanted the same health care that a member of Congress, that Bernie Sanders has today through the Affordable Care Act, he's paying approximately $275 a month, while me as a citizen will have to pay close to $1,000. Is that fair? Is that good health insurance? Based on, except my age, I'm 20, 30 years, 40 years younger than Bernie. But is that good health care? And I think that's the issue where take these subsidies away that Congress gets. Is this good health care for the American people? Me, no, I don't want to pay $700 more for something that we're getting the same exact plan. We have the same exact income. That does not make sense. And I think that when we have a real conversation about healthcare in America, and we really look down at, okay, cool, let me get the 75% subsidy that you get, then go. Sir, it's private insurance. Listen, yeah, private insurance is better. To me, I had private insurance before I actually stumbled across the affordable Obamacare, before I got on Obamacare by mistake. Yes, private insurance was a lot better. But I do understand for people that are poor, indigent, living below the poverty level, $200 or $300 a month for healthcare may break their bank. They may not be able to afford food and insurance, like car insurance and healthcare and tuition and buying new clothes and food and rent and everything else. I'm not being naive to that, right? But for people who can, right? People who can afford it, say, you know what? Let me go to healthcare.gov. Let me put in my income. Let me put in my health. Let me put in everything. And if I get the same plan, I happen to match up with the same plan as a Jasmine Crockett, the same plan as a Bernie Sanders, the same plan as a Hakeem Jeffries, the same plan as a Peter Thune, whoever, right? And you see that they pay, again, $275 to my $997. That's where the frustration starts. Just to be fair, my opinion. And I know that members of Congress, I don't give a shit. Like, there's no reason I should have the same level of income, and you pay $700 less than me. I don't give a shit. What are we talking about? Let's hear what Chuck Schumer has to say.
Mr. President,
other live news. I got a 12 o'clock, so
America is
I'm
in
going
the
to
midst of a Republican-made healthcare crisis, worse than anything the American people have seen in decades. Republicans have spent the past 10 months dismantling the healthcare system, skyrocketing costs, and making every day harder for American families.
And Tony, it makes sense when you look at it, when you actually stumble across the fact of, yes, I know different states. Yes, I know the different criteria of it, but it's a simple fact of private insurance, I feel, is still better than the Affordable Care Act. My 2 cents from my experience, right? At the same time, I think that people who are just hearing the narrative of, hey, help the Affordable Care Act, save all the rest of this stuff, they're to a point of saying, in just real conversations with average people, like, yeah, this shit is shit. I've talked to people that were professional athletes. I've talked to professionals in other aspects who are like, listen, Texas, Arkansas, wherever you are, they're complaining about the Affordable Care Act. So if that's the example I want to use, that's a baseline example. Yes, it's going to change state to state, but if that's the baseline and that's the overall complaint, then some people don't fuck with it, to be fair. And I'm a Democrat, so I'm not Democrat policy. I'm just anti, for somebody who's been in this, who's actually stumbled across this Affordable Care Act shit. I don't want it. I wouldn't want anybody else to pay close to $400 a month for some health care that somebody is paying $80 a year for. I don't care if it's bronze, gold, or diamond. What are we talking about? Can we agree on that?
Because of Republicans, Americans are going to suffer immensely as this health care crisis gets worse. Democrats have been fighting to end this crisis over and over again. Democrats have wanted to lower costs, but Republicans fought us every step of the way. We gave Republicans not 1, not 2, but 3 chances this year to extend the ACA premium tax credits, Republicans
not.
said no every time. On Friday, we offered Republicans a compromise, a proposal that would extend the ACA tax credits for a year and open up the government at the same time. They once again said no. And when they said no on our compromise, they showed that they are against any health care reform. Instead, they passed the biggest health care cuts in our nation's history just to give tax breaks to billionaires, and even then, they weren't satisfied with merely closing hospitals and community health clinics. They callously did nothing to deal with the looming crisis of ACA credits. Premiums will spike by thousands of dollars a month. Millions will lose insurance. Democrats have sounded the alarm. We have demanded for months to meet with the Republican leadership. But Republican leaders refuse to even discuss the issue, let alone negotiate it. We've asked them to meet in the summer and throughout the shutdown. To this day, Republicans still say no. We asked President Trump to step in and meet with us to deliver lower health care for Americans, and instead, Donald Trump has taken the American people hostage, from cutting off food aid to hungry families and vets and seniors and kids, to manufacturing flight cancellations, to cutting off home heating aid, while he builds a billion-dollar ballroom with gold-plated toilets. Therefore, I must vote no. This health care crisis is so severe, so urgent, so devastating for families back home that I cannot in good faith support this CR that fails to address the health care crisis.
Is Chuck Schumer done after this,
Let me
y'all?
be clear. However this vote turns out, this fight will and must continue. Democrats must fight because of millions of families will lose health care coverage. We must fight because children who are dying of cancer will not get health care coverage. We must fight because a senior citizen cannot afford to pay $25,000 a year just for health insurance.
That's real.
We must fight to keep millions from financial ruin. And make no mistake about it, the American people know who is inflicting this health care trauma on them: Donald Trump and the Republicans. Americans will remember Republican intransigence every time they make a sky-high payment on health insurance. So we are going to fight legislatively, fight back home, fight in the courts, and bring this fight in the elections. Health care costs made a major impact on the 2025 election, and they will certainly have an even greater impact on the 2026 election. So in conclusion, the contrast between the two parties is crystal clear. Republicans are the party hell-bent on taking people's health care away, all to bow to the billionaire elite and special interests. Democrats are united as the party of lower health care costs and improving our health care system. We will not give up this fight. We will deliver for the American people.
Now, when you have 8 Democrats break with Schumer, and of course the headlines are Democrats cave on one side, and I see some other liberal talking heads are upset that they even came to the table because we won last week. We won elections in New York. We won seats in Mississippi. We stopped a super majority in Mississippi state legislature. We won all over. We have momentum going to the midterms. Why not just let the shutdown happen? And I think Schumer realized that, again, if people don't have food, not Schumer, these Democrats, these 8 Democrats realize people don't have food on the table for Thanksgiving. This shit's gonna get worse than it currently is. But I think Democrats gonna be mad regardless, respectfully, right?
Let's begin with Madeline Rivera live from Washington
with
with the latest on when we can expect this shutdown to officially end. Maddie, good morning.
Good morning, Todd. Well, the vote the Senate took overnight is the first step in a series of procedural maneuvers. And of course, the House will have to vote on the package, too. So it will take a few more days before the government reopens. But Sunday's vote was the first clear sign that a bipartisan deal had been reached after a roughly 40-day stalemate. The Senate voted 60-40 to back a revamped GOP funding bill that would keep the government open until the end of January. 8 Democrats joined Republicans to pass the bill, including Senate Minority Whip Dick Durbin, Senators Tim Kaine, Catherine Cortez Masto, and Jackie Rosen, among others.
Now, Fetterman, I know. Shout out to my boy. I'm not going to shout him out on here because he got a real job. Kaine flip. So you can see, let's look at the states. Durbin, I think he may have a challenge. I don't know. Not really. I'm trying to understand New Hampshire. Yeah, most likely it makes sense for the New Hampshire guys. So Maine kind of goes. Yeah, Maine makes sense. Pennsylvania. Fetterman does realize Pennsylvania went red, so he's trying to save his job. But he did have a good interview about that as well. Nevada, they're scared. Virginia, we got a Democratic governor. It wasn't enough for Tim Kaine. We see. These are the people that they say are the sellouts. These are who Democrats are going to label as the sellouts for meeting in the middle and reopening the government, and at least start the partisan process of actually getting the government back open, the aviation people back working, and also the SNAP benefits back flowing. So we'll see how it rolls out, man. Let's get back to this.
This is the beginning to show and fight for Americans across the country. Let me just say this. With the government open, we can focus on passing a full bipartisan budget for 2026.
I understand that not all of my Democratic colleagues are satisfied with this agreement, but waiting another week or another month wouldn't deliver a better outcome. So let me be clear. No one in the Senate chamber wants to extend the ACA tax credits more than I do.
I joined this group to make sure that we could get important protections for federal employees. And what we have in this bill is the restoration of all the furloughed employees and a guarantee of their back pay.
So despite them touting what they did get, these Dems are facing criticism from their party because the package does not include a deal on Obamacare subsidies. It only includes a guarantee on a vote for the tax credits, far from what progressives and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer had pushed for.
Schumer lost control, man.
Democrats voted with the Republicans to allow them to go forward on this continuing resolution. And to my mind, this was a very, very bad vote. We got a lot of work to do, but to be honest with you, tonight was not a good night.
Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna is already targeting Schumer, saying Senator Schumer is no longer effective and should be replaced. If you can't lead the fight to stop healthcare premiums from skyrocketing for Americans, what will you fight for?
Damn.
Moving forward, senators need to reach a time agreement before holding a final vote on the package. Then it will only need a simple majority to pass the upper chamber. Todd.
Miles to go before we sleep. Maddie, thank you. With that, let us bring in former advisor to Donald Trump, Jason Miller. And Jason, you heard in Maddie's report the Democrats touting all of the things that they got. But to me, they didn't really get anything. All they got was a promise to hold a vote on Obamacare subsidies. So, Jason, what was the point of all this?
Well, exactly. There was no point. This entire shutdown was unnecessary. It was unneeded. And the only reason why it happened is because Senator Chuck Schumer and other Senate Democrats are scared to death of the extremist wing of their party, the AOCs, and they're worried they're going to get primary challenges. I really think that there's going to be a reckoning here, both from Americans, travelers who are stranded at airports or had flights canceled, members of the military who had to stand in line for food banks because they didn't have money coming in because of what the Senate Democrats did. And also, I think there'll be a reckoning, as we saw from Ro Khanna saying this about Senator Schumer, from the extremist left within the Democrat base saying, Chuck Schumer, why did you cave? So this was completely unnecessary. It was unneeded all along. Senator John Thune said, just simply pass the continuing resolution, open government, then we could talk about health care. But instead, Chuck Schumer decided to hold everybody hostage.
Again, the exact same continuing resolution that everybody voted for back in March. Nothing changed.
And again, that's why people were mad at Stephen A. Smith for attacking Jasmine Crockett, because, again, he was attacking House members when he could have called Chuck Schumer to the floor. He could have called Cory Booker to the floor, or at least leadership in the Senate on the Democratic side that say something here. But overall, I still think, just internally, I think it's both sides, right? Both sides of the aisle realized that it would draw down to this, and they also realized that SNAP benefits on the table, poor people's health care was on the table, old people's health care was on the table, and they didn't give a shit until the flights start getting delayed, and they're like, you know what, shit, hey, I really can't even get out of DC. Because I would say it like this. Let's say you got to travel back to Kentucky, travel back to Arkansas, wherever, Texas, after a long week, and you're flying out of DC, right? All right, cool. You hit that airport, you're not flying private. You're hitting all the constituents. Everybody's mad. You're like, damn, I can't go nowhere. Or you're stuck in DC and you can't go nowhere because people are furloughed. After a while, people are going to cave. I just don't see Schumer getting all the blame and Republicans getting none. But now that there's compromise, of course, they're going to turn back on Schumer. Democrats are funny. Democrats are really funny. We got Mo, Big Zoe speaking soon. I'm going to get to that press conference about 10 minutes from now.
For the rest of this week, Senate Democrats can really do this the easy way, or they can do this the hard way. They can fast track the process to get this to the House quickly, or they can force it to just drag on all week long. Which path do you think the Democrats in the Senate will choose?
I think even though many of the Senate Democrats will echo the thoughts of Bernie Sanders saying that they didn't like this vote, I think the reality is that the vast majority, the biggest group of Senate Democrats are glad that some of their colleagues caved because this is what everybody wanted. There was no one at home who was saying, Senators, thank you for keeping the government shut down. This was massive chaos. We saw what it did to the markets. We saw from Secretary Bessent saying the impact that this has had on the economy.
Good news, even though obviously we didn't need to get here this way. This other thing could really be good news. Let's get to this now. President Trump promising a tariff dividend to all Americans. Quote, people that are against tariffs are fools. We are now the richest, most respected country in the world with almost no inflation and a record stock market price. 401ks are highest ever. We are taking in trillions of dollars and will soon begin paying down our enormous debt, $37 trillion. Record investment in the U.S. Plants and factories going up all over the place. Here's the key part, Jason. A dividend of at least $2,000 a person, not including high-income people, will be paid to everyone. Jason, how realistic is this? Could our bank accounts actually see a boost?
So I love this idea from President Trump, and this is the way that he always looks outside of the political norms and says he can deliver for the American people. We're still digging our way out of the hole that Joe Biden left us, 4 years of absolute financial chaos. And we're seeing what President Trump is doing with the big, beautiful bill, the no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. But many Americans are still struggling to get back on foot after what they saw from Joe Biden. And so I think this idea to take $2,000 per person with the exception of the higher wage earners and say, let's give Americans a little bit of a boost here, let them get some of that credit that's coming in from the tariffs, I think would be a great shot in the arm. It'll dovetail right with what President Trump is doing by bringing down gas.
The scammers are going to be very ready to duplicate 10 or 15 people's information and get a whole lot of tariff money back. I'm telling you now, do not think for 1 second that the scammers are not waiting for the $2,000 bag to drop across. Because when we find out that at least $200 million of the $2,000 tariff money, dividend money was hit, that's when people are going to be like, damn, yeah, the motherfucking scammers on it. What are we talking about, man? Like, let's be for real. There's never been a program where they disperse money, even PPP. Go back to PPP. How many people you know didn't have any kind of business, worked at UPS, Amazon, delivering packages. Next thing you know, they got a music studio. They're a whole music producer, and they're getting a $100,000 PPP loan and driving a Benz now. Let's go, man. We know the scams are real. So let's not act like the dividend hit, the scammers won't be hitting too. Come on now.
And other costs of keeping inflation low. So I love it. I hope they do it.
I hope they can do it, but also pay down the $37 trillion in debt that you heard the president mention there. If they can do both, I think that is a win-win, but we will see. Jason Miller, thank you, sir, for getting up.
I just don't see it happening without some kind of fraud. I mean, I didn't get the last PPP loan. I didn't get any of that. I just happened to be, you know, one of those ones that didn't get it, or the little stimulus that they popped out. I didn't get that one either. You know what I'm saying? So, another day of people getting government money and being happy about it while I just sit here and sulk in my hard work and pull myself up my bootstraps type shit. But it is what it is. What else do we have? I want to hear more opinions about this shutdown and Schumer. Not from Fox News though. Let me let me hear what MSNBC has to say. It's always good to get a balanced perspective on this thing, right? That's what they say. Hold on, I'm trying to find a good one. Because all I have is Fox, like Fox. Oh, found an MSNBC. Caught up on CNBC. CNBC is good. I mean, it's not as bad as MSNBC.
Now, what's going on in Washington over the weekend? The Senate now taking a first step towards ending that more than 40-day now long government shutdown. Emily Wilkins is, I don't know if you slept for the last 72 hours. Where are we?
Well, Andrew, we have a breakthrough. Congress has broken through the logjam, and they now appear to be on this glide path to reopen the government. Now, what happened last night is 8 Senate Democrats, we've been looking for that number for the last 40 days. They joined with Republicans to take that first steps to pass a funding bill, finally again hitting that 60-vote threshold. And look, there are going to be a few more votes in the Senate. We've got to have at least one more vote in the House. But at this point, the shutdown could be done within the next couple days and within the next week. Now, the agreement that they put together, it funds part of the government, including things like SNAP, agriculture, veterans programs for the rest of the 2026 fiscal year. For the rest of the government, it continues funding until January 30th. It also goes ahead and reverses those attempted firings of federal employees during the shutdown, make sure that all the federal employees are going to get their back pay.
This is kind of good, back pay especially. You've been working for a whole month, didn't get paid. The subsidies are going until Christmas, so people will find out, I guess, where we are by Christmas with that. Going into Valentine's Day. So we'll get through Martin Luther King Day, George Washington's birthday, until we have this conversation again. Really around King Day, I think it should be popping up. Going in right into Black History Month, which will be amazing, right? And then SNAP, government programs, funded through September, which means that essentially when we get to the primaries, right after that August primary, and we get to September around Labor Day, we're gonna be right back here having deja vu. Like, didn't we just go through this shutdown like last week? No, that was last October, November, where we shut down for 40 days. And I don't see the government being shut down going into another election, because if that happens like this year, again, we'll see a lot of Democrats raising up other places. And again, even though I took some heat from this in a group chat with some other professionals about, I didn't really think a lot of Democrats won. Like, they won safe areas, right? Even New York City, it's not like a Republican was going to win that seat for real. Cuomo was going to win for real. You knew a Democrat was going to win that seat. So Virginia, Jersey, other places, the biggest thing was in the South, where I saw someone highlight earlier they didn't spend any more money in Mississippi, as the homie Gary Chambers would say. But what they ended up doing was still turning out. So I think it was word of mouth. It was frustration. It was a lot of things. But there's still going to be a deep dive analysis to see, okay, what was it that drove people? Was it racism? Was it Trump? Was it the tariffs? Was it ICE? And then have that kind of be the narrative going into the next election. But I think that we're at least playing on even kill. Like, Democrats are some kind of engaged, but I still don't think the messaging works for a lot of the people that are impacted. Because again, my theory is, out of those 40 million people that didn't or on SNAP, how many of them didn't vote? Take out the children. There's probably a good chunk of them that didn't give a fuck to begin with, and now they're here like, what the hell do I have to do? And maybe that'll be encouraging enough for them to vote. But either way, if you haven't voted or you did vote, make sure, my first pub of the day for almost an hour, make sure you like and subscribe. We're almost at 8,250 subscribers. Love to hit that benchmark today if we can get there. If you're tapping in from all over the world, let me know where you're tapping in from. I am in Florida today, Jacksonville, Florida. But appreciate y'all tapping in with your boy, man.
And Democrats have been promised a vote on extending those healthcare tax credits by the second week of December on a bill of their choosing. And while, again, these 8 Democrats, they've said the deal on the table right now, it's the best they were going to get, others within their party, including Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, were livid that the shutdown is going to end with no concrete deal on those healthcare tax credits.
I must vote no.
We already talked about this.
This healthcare crisis is so severe, so urgent, so devastating for families back home that I cannot in good faith support this CR that fails to address the healthcare crisis.
The Senate will meet today to keep moving this package forward. The House is
I'm
also expected to
on
return
Big Zo.
this week, and they, of course,
I'm gonna go to
they're going to
Jasmine
need to
Crockett after
pass the
this.
Senate's
Yeah,
agreement
MSNBC,
before
I'm gonna
this
go
is
to.
over. Guys?
No, it's kind of boring. I mean, we've seen what the Democrats have done. They've flipped on Schumer. Let me close some of the other windows. Not going back to that. I may hit that one later. Already hit that one. Hold on, y'all. We ended that one. Whoop. Did that one. Big Chuck. All right, there we go. We're gonna go Jasmine Crockett here. MSNBC interview. Congress on vacation.
Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's a Democrat of Texas, and she joins me now. Congresswoman Crockett, I had sort of followed this after the death of Sylvester Turner and the news about them not using that May date. But when I re-immersed myself in the facts here, it's pretty shocking this district is being kept without congressional representation for it's going to end up being maybe 10 months.
Actually, it may be very close to a year by the time all is said and done. What most people don't realize is that, number one, we lost 3 Democrats since Donald Trump has sworn in, and it was actually Sylvester Turner who passed away, unfortunately, first. Yet it is his seat that is actually going to be filled last. Just think about that for 2 seconds. You just talked about Representative Grijalva, or Representative-elect, since she's not sworn in. Let me clarify that. And so Christian Menifee, who is currently the acting county attorney in Harris County, he actually started to make some noise. He came to D.C., he talked to leadership here, and he decided that if need be, he was going to file a lawsuit to get Greg Abbott to actually set an election. And now we do have some parameters, but when I say he is slow walking this, I mean, he is slow walking it, and it is so sad. I don't know how anyone in the 18th Congressional District can even find themselves voting for a man that would leave them without representation. We know that once you are sworn in, you then have to deal with constituent services. You've got to make sure you're dealing with whoever needs help from the VA, whoever needs help from the IRS or Social Security, as we are.
And you better believe those calls are coming in. I was talking to a couple of staffers, different states, Florida included, that said the unemployment calls coming in, the immigration calls coming in, like people with CDL licenses, people who are Caucasian in face, may have been born at a army base, but all of a sudden can't even work on a CDL license because guess what? They weren't technically born American. They lost their license through this whole administration, and they voted for Trump, right? And they still love Trump. They still support Trump, but they're impacted by it. And there has to be a point of saying, okay, cool. When it starts hurting your everyday pockets and everyday people are impacted, who do they go to if their elected representative isn't sworn in? Or if the people didn't have cared enough to have an election for those people who are impacted. So now it's like, okay, out of those pockets of America where Trump voters are, Biden voters are, non-voters are, and they're actually calling for services and the person's not elected to serve, or this person's elected to serve but not sworn in, who gives a shit about them? That is the issue at hand here, to be fair, right? But what you gonna do? I mean, Mike Johnson has supreme authority right now.
About to go into, obviously, tax season if we can open the government back. And now we know that people are devastated because they don't even know where their next meal is coming from because of this rogue government. And we know that there's not anyone who can hold a town hall and give them the updates on what's happening in D.C. So everyone should be outraged by this. This should not be a partisan thing, but as we know, some people love to just kind of run to their corners instead of pointing out right is right and wrong is wrong.
Yeah, I mean, your point there is a really important one, because at one level, right, the calculation by Mike Johnson in refusing to swear in Adelita Grijalva, which he could do, there's these pro forma sessions they keep doing, he's refusing to do it. He doesn't want that +1 added to the tally. It's pure partisan power consideration. Same with Greg Abbott, who slow-walked this, obviously, because he wants to keep the Democratic number in the House as small as possible in a very narrow 5-vote majority. But your point here was that, you know, there's 700,000 people represented in each congressional district. Like, they have no representation. I mean, and Congresswoman-elect Grijalva has said this to me, you know, I want to help them. The government's shut down. We've got federal workers in my district. Like, the idea that you just don't get to have a congressperson is it feels profoundly un-American and anti-democratic to me.
Absolutely. I mean, the idea that, and Rep-elect Grijalva is in a very unique situation because in this moment, those constituent services should still be going at least for the 18th Congressional District. But once there was someone who was elected, everything stopped for Rep-elect Grijalva, right? So now her constituents literally have absolutely nothing. Like, there's no staff that can do any work. They have her to say she's rep-elect, but there's nothing she can do. She can't log into systems. She barely is in an office, so she can't be opening cases so that once the government opens, that her staff can kind of deal with those things. It is really sad. And here's the other kicker to this, right? Let's say, you know, our speaker decided to grow a spine and actually go ahead and swear in Rep-elect Grijalva. Well, ultimately, that means that we have the 218 signatures that we need for the discharge petition. But since we still aren't in session, it's not like a bill can come to the floor. Like, we have no bills that are hitting the floor anyway. So ultimately, like, those two things are going to happen at the same time, no matter what. So right now, why don't you at least try to look like you're serious about your job and look like you are doing the work of the people and not look like a petulant child and swear her in? Because at the end of the day, because you've decided to avoid having us in session, you can't take a vote on a bill anyway.
Yeah, and the other thing is just bring back Congress into session. Again, I can't figure out, it's very hard to tell because he does these press conferences every day, which sort of hits his talking points, says that he hasn't seen anything in the news, blames the Democrats. What the position is, he like doesn't want to bring you back from recess because then he has to swear in Grijalva, or he doesn't want to swear in Grijalva because he doesn't want to bring you back to, I don't know. But the point being, it's what, 9 weeks now? It's 1/10 of the term she was elected to will have been spent on ice.
Yeah.
Because Mike Johnson doesn't think anyone in the House of Representatives should work.
Yeah, it is absolutely astounding. And I want people to pay attention. When you go and you hit those booths come the midterms, think about which party decided that it was okay to literally be on vacation while it is that people were going hungry in the streets of America. This isn't about partisanship. Again, to me, I mean, like, it's really clear to me. We have over 40 million people in this country that are not going to be with their SNAP benefits because you have people that have decided that they believe that they are basically pawns in a game of chess. That is not what anyone should want from their elected officials, whether you are a SNAP recipient or otherwise. And the idea that we're still getting paid while we're telling air traffic controllers who are responsible for keeping planes and people safe that they're not getting checks, or while we're looking at TSA, which they tend to be some of our lowest paid federal employees, and tell them, oh, well, just keep showing up to work because if you go get another job, you're going to lose this job while we literally are not working. Make it make sense. And ultimately, I need everybody to just vote in their own best interest.
And joining me now is the House Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries of New York. Leader Jeffries, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Take this call. Hold on.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
It's great to have you here. Let's start on the government shutdown, now the longest in U.S. history. Leader Jeffries, do you believe that your colleagues in the Senate are close to reaching a deal and ending this shutdown?
Well, we need to end the Trump Republican shutdown, the longest shutdown, of course, in American history. And as Democrats, we've repeatedly maintained that we will sit down anytime.
My bad, y'all. I had a couple calls come in.
In order to reopen.
Oh, yeah, I had a couple calls come in. Husband, father, energy consultant, lobbyist. Have a 12 o'clock conference call. So hopefully we'll be able to get through this. I'm waiting on Big Zo to start his press conference, but going through the mix of media here. I don't really like Hakeem Jeffries, not going to hold it. But I also want to get to Florida's gubernatorial race could be historic. We have Jerry Demings, former county mayor, former sheriff, or county mayor, former sheriff, African-American, Democrat, who's hopped in the race against the former Republican David Jolly, or former Republican turned Democrat David Jolly. And it's going to be an interesting primary because you could have Byron Donalds on one side, Jerry Demings on the other. And the first time in U.S. history, two black candidates are going for gubernatorial races. But I do feel at the same time, this could hurt Byron's race only because I think the Republicans can see, wait, there'll be two brothers on the ticket. They'll probably say brothers different. And at the end of the day, they'll be like, well, damn, I may not want either one of those. So let me vote for Jay Collins or vote for Paul Renner. Vote for some other Republican because that's more safer for him. But either way, let's get down King Jeffries for now.
Open the government to find a bipartisan path forward to enacting a spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people, which means trying to drive down the high cost of living because America under Donald Trump and Republican policies has become far too expensive, while at the same time dealing with the Republican healthcare crisis that threatens to drive up premiums, copays, and deductibles to levels that will be unaffordable for working class Americans because of the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits.
Well, Leader Jeffries, Senate Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer did make a new offer, effectively saying, let's extend Obamacare subsidies for 1 year in exchange for reopening the government for 1 year. You have said that you would support that proposal, but just last month you said this. Take a look.
A 1-year extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits is not acceptable. It's a non-starter.
Now he's going to flip his position. Politics. So again, same people that are mad at Democrats for compromising have to realize that the Democrats are going to flip-flop on positions regardless of the fact. So let's see what Hakeem Jeffries got to say about this flip-flop.
It's a non-starter.
So, Leader Jeffries, what changed?
Well, the proposal that I was making reference to in October was something that was floated out there by a handful of rank-and-file House Republicans, and that was immediately rejected by House Republican leadership because they have no interest in driving down the high cost of living for everyday Americans. The Schumer proposal, of course, was offered in good faith. It's both a 1-year extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits. Now we're already in the middle of the open enrollment period. Tens of millions of people are on the brink of facing dramatically increased health care costs that in some cases could be $1,000 or $2,000 per month. That is unaffordable for middle-class Americans, working-class Americans, and everyday Americans. And the Schumer proposal also provides a path toward bipartisan negotiations for a multi-year extension, which would provide the type of certainty that the American people need.
Well, as you know, Republican leader John Thune has called it a non-starter. Let me ask you, would you support a bill that would include a promise to vote on extending Obamacare subsidies? Is that something you could live with?
I'm going to pause this to go to Health Secretary RFK Jr. live.
That's not progress. That's neglect. That's malpractice. We can no longer accept a culture of fear that blocks innovation and keeps patients from proven therapies. But today, thanks to President Trump's bold leadership and unwavering commitment to restoring trust in public health and the courage of Commissioner Marty McCary, the FDA is correcting that mistake. After a thorough, evidence-based review of decades of scientific data, an expert panel, and public testimony, the FDA is announcing today that it will remove the misleading black box warnings from all HRT products. For the first time in a generation, the FDA is standing with science and standing with women. The era of ignoring women's health is older. The era of patronizing women is older. The FDA will follow the science, and America's women will finally get the care, the respect, and the honesty that they deserve. Today, we are restoring integrity to medicine, restoring faith in public health, and we are restoring balance to the lives of millions of women who have been ignored for too long. And that's what it means to make America healthy again. And now it's my honor to introduce my friend, Dr. and Commissioner Dr. Marty McCary, who will share some more about this landmark decision and the steps that FDA is taking to improve the lives of millions of women.
Thanks, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Garchurch.
Always an honor. Secretary Chavez-Dreamer, thank you for being here. Madam Second Lady, Mrs. Vance, thank you for supporting this endeavor. All my colleagues at the FDA, my colleagues at HHS, this is a historic day for women in the United States. The Women's Health Initiative study was the largest study ever done in U.S. history, a $1 billion study at the time. And you just heard how that study was misrepresented and created a fear machine that lingers to this day. Ask your doctor. But what you may not know is that there was an incredible backstory. The headline that hormone replacement therapy causes breast cancer was released to the media before the scientific data was released to the public. A week later, once the data was published...
Hold on, we got Big Zo live.
Good morning, everyone.
I first want to say thank you to Nancy Cantor, president of Hunter College, for having us here today.
Why do you look
It
so
is a
pixelated?
privilege to be here as we take the next big step forward into our mayoral transition. And it feels fitting to be standing in the very place where FDR shaped his own presidential transition, and where he and his team devised the foundation of the New Deal, including Social Security. I've said many times that, above all, my politics is one of consistency. When we launched our campaign in October of last year, we made clear that it would be focused on tackling the affordability crisis that devastates far too many working New Yorkers across these 5 boroughs. Those who work from dusk until dawn, and still, it isn't enough.
I can't do nothing about the camera quality. It's coming in on this side, not mine, y'all. Like, let me try to get a better one. It's absolutely crazy. How do a mayor elected in New York getting such bad camera quality? Doesn't even make sense. The ABC New York, too.
Consistency extends beyond our policy priorities. Nothing has been more unwavering within this movement than our commitment to
Let me refresh this. This is sickening.
Oriented and pragmatically focused.
And freezing the right to transform our city. My first deputy mayor, Dean Fullahan. Except that I know for many, he will require no introduction. I'm grateful to him for returning to public service, and I know he has chosen to do so because he believes in our administration's ability to deliver universal child care, making the slowest buses in America fast and free, and freezing the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants in this city. Dean has been an incredibly influential leader and manager in New York City government and state government for almost 5 decades. No one is better versed in how city government functions, how it engages productively with leadership in Albany, or has a deeper understanding of how to achieve positive outcomes from even the most challenging of situations. When Dean began his career in New York politics in the late 70s, the Bronx was burning. Over his decades of service in the Assembly, he rose to manage negotiations over the budget process and stewarded our state into a period of financial stability. Few have as much experience leading from City Hall. Having served as Director of Operations for Mayor Giuliani, he later served as Mayor de Blasio's Budget Director from 2014 to 2018. And the role of First Deputy Mayor will not be foreign to him. He served in this position under Mayor de Blasio after leading OMB, and ran the city whenever Mayor de Blasio was not in the city.
So Mamdani isn't draining. So Mamdani is not draining the swamp in New York City, getting people with experience. So how does that help him implement this plan? We'll see.
I will turn to Dean for counsel, not only for his wealth of managerial experience, but also because of the similarity between our visions for this city. Dean is a child of Lebanese immigrants, and like me, he has seen our city through the prism of the immigrant experience, and knows well that there are many New Yorkers who our leaders never tend to. I've been deeply impressed by how fiercely he shares my belief that this city must be one that works for the many instead of just for the privileged few, and how committed he is to enacting this agenda. We know that the scope of that agenda is a vast one, and so too are the numbers of those who would wish it to fail. I speak not only of those who have benefited from this broken politics, but also those of our president and his federal government, who will not only want to see a failure in the delivery of these agenda items, but also an inability of our administration to live up to that which we ran on. Dean's steadiness, his managerial competence, and his clarity of vision will support me as we take on those who would wish this to be a continuation of politics as it has been, and instead deliver what politics can be in this city that we call home. I also want to announce my incoming Chief of Staff, the unparalleled L. Bisgard Church. Few have played a more central role in this movement, or in every victory we achieved together in the Assembly, than L. She became my Assembly Chief of Staff nearly 5 years ago to the day, worked closely with me to win hundreds of millions of dollars in relief for taxi drivers, and served as the campaign manager for our historic primary campaign. Anyone who knows Elle knows her as someone unapologetically committed to the cause of improving the lives of working people. These are not just the political positions that she holds, they are deeply humanistic principles from which she never strays. For all of us who have been fortunate enough to work alongside
This camera quality
Elle
is some shit.
is our moral compass, our brilliant, strategic
y'all for all
center,
y'all patience
and a
here. Watch what
genuinely
you wear.
kind and selfless person. As my Chief of Staff, Elle will remain intimately involved in every decision we make, from who joins the administration, to how we enact our agenda, to how we ensure that government remains accessible and transparent to every New Yorker. And together, alongside Dean, she will be responsible for ensuring that our commitment to excellence remains inviolable and that City Hall remains what we have sought to make it, a shining beacon of good governance across the city, across the state, and across this country. I know that many have watched our victory with fascination and excitement. My goal is that the triumph we won last Tuesday to quickly be subsumed under the drumbeat of achievements that we deliver from City Hall, achievements that make immediate, meaningful differences in the lives of New Yorkers too often forgotten and ignored by those who have held positions such as these. These leaders alongside me are only the first of many that we will announce. I hope their reputations and records of accomplishment are proof of intent to deliver tangible change. This is a moment of opportunity that comes along rarely, and we seize upon it to usher in a new day for New York. Thank you, and I would now like to introduce my Chief of Staff, Elle Bisgard-Church.
I'm not going to hear Chief of Staff at a press conference. I'm sorry. It's not happening. But I will talk about President Trump pardoning Rudy Giuliani and others from the 2020 election scheme. Now, if you thought the distractions were gone or over, they're in full-fledged over here, man. Listen. I, Donald Trump, do hereby grant a full, complete, and unconditional pardon to all United States citizens for conduct relating to the advice, creation, organization, execution, submission, support, voting, activities, participation in, or advocacy for, or of any slate or proposed slate of presidential electors, whether or not recognized by any state. So what are we doing? Everybody's free?
MSNBC White House reporter Laura Barron-Lopez is back with us. And joining us now, MSNBC legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Paul Butler. Laura, none of these people of the, some dozen plus that are pardoned faced federal charges. Many were charged with state crimes for trying to overturn the 2020 election results. So what's the significance here of these pardons?
That's right. Many of them were a part of that Georgia case listed as co-conspirators with President Trump in Georgia, including Sidney Powell, Jenna Ellis, Kenneth Chesebro, who pled guilty to state criminal cases. So, our understanding of the law, Anna, is that the president cannot pardon people for state convictions or state crimes. That being said, this is something that fits in with a long-held goal of the president and of Ed Martin, his pardon attorney, which is that they have essentially said, quote, no MAGA left behind. That means anyone who has been an ally of the president who could potentially face criminal charges down the road or who has faced criminal charges in the past, that they will protect them and that they will help them, including in cases related to the 2020 election, because the president has been trying to rewrite the history of the 2020 election and has continued to this day to lie about it being rigged, Anna.
This certainly sends a message for sure. President Trump has long said that he could pardon himself for any federal crimes that he faced before he was reelected. Yet this document explicitly excludes him. Paul, what do you make of that?
So this pardon does not technically apply to Trump, but it does have this broad language about all U.S. citizens who were trying to protect the integrity of the 2020 election are pardoned. So theoretically, that could include Donald Trump, who, after all, was prosecuted by Jack Smith for alleged crimes related to the 2020 election. The Supreme Court has never decided whether a president could pardon himself or herself, Anna.
So that is another thing we'll put a pin in for now because he's not trying to pardon himself. But Laura, we've also we're getting a new development related to that sprawling investigation into former U.S. intelligence officers, including former CIA director and MSNBC analyst John Brennan. What's the latest on this front?
So what we know that late last week, a grand jury approved 30 subpoenas related to the probe that you're talking about, Anna, into these intelligence officials, former administration and intelligence officials. And so they approved 30 subpoenas for including John Brennan, the former CIA director, Peter Strzok, a former FBI agent, and Lisa Page, a former FBI lawyer. So that's the information that we essentially have so far. But again, it speaks to that bigger picture that I was just talking about, which is that the president, whether it's protecting those who went down the path with him of lying about the 2020 election, or seeking out his retribution campaign of going after any perceived political enemies, any people he feels have wronged him. This is a part of that big effort to essentially wield the power of the Justice Department and of the law as he sees fit, because he essentially, the president has repeatedly said that he believes that as long as he's doing what he thinks is in the best interest of the country, that it isn't against the law.
So, Paul, we don't know exactly what they were asked to turn over, but when someone is given a subpoena, what information is provided to that person? Would there typically be mention of specific crimes being investigated, for example?
No, if it's a grand jury investigation, it can subpoena anything that's relevant to the investigation. The normal rules of evidence about what's admissible in court don't apply. So, Anna, this is a really scary and troubling development, even in the context of all of the ways that the Trump administration is weaponizing the Justice Department. It's this outlandish conspiracy theory that Barack Obama and Joe Biden plotted with the FBI and the Department of Justice and Democrats in Congress to try to bring Donald Trump down by violating his civil rights. It's ludicrous, but it's being investigated by a federal prosecutor appointed by Donald Trump, who would legitimately be concerned that he will lose his job if he doesn't do what the president wants him to do.
Paul Butler, Laura Barone-Lopez, thank you both very much.
That's kind of crazy. I mean, CNN has to say about the same thing. They're going to probably talk about Giuliani more.
Pardoned some of his most loyal allies from the 2020 era.
I was going to hear about Giuliani. Fuck the rest of the real.
Efforts to overturn the 2020 election results when he lost the White House to Joe Biden. On the pardon list, former Trump attorneys Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell, as well as the president's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows. In all, the Justice Department says that 77 people received what they're describing as, quote, full, complete, and unconditional pardons related to all of this. CNN's Kevin Liptak is at the White House for us on this one. Kevin, what more are you hearing about this? Is the White House saying...
I want to hear more about that. I thought it would be more about Giuliani for real. What I do want to go to is, like I promised earlier, Florida has a new gubernatorial candidate. Now, we can look at the success the Democrats had last Tuesday and say, yes, we have momentum going into next November. The issue is Democrats, for some odd reason, in Georgia and Florida, are pushing former Republican candidates as Democrats and hoping that the Republicans say, you know what, I remember this guy. He's just a Democrat now. And Democrats, hey, he's one of us now. And they'll go win in a post-DeSantis era. The issue is, you have Byron Donalds on that side that has a Trump endorsement and infighting with the Republicans from the Florida House or Florida Senate, even members across the state. It's like really kind of troubling. It's a split. Damn, I'm fucking up with the words. It's a fractured unit on the right side. But on the left side, they're kind of confused, running wild. And now you have a good Democrat who, a former sheriff, law enforcement, a county mayor in Orange County, Orlando, where everybody loves to visit. And at the same time, his wife ran statewide. Now he's running statewide, and it could be one of the, humbly, top political families in the state of Florida, especially if you melanated. However, it's a long shot race for a Democrat to be governor. It's a long shot to potentially have Byron Donalds and Jerry Demings, two African-American professional men, running for governor in Florida, where a black man has never graced the governor's mansion, at least as governor. Well, let's tap into Jerry Demings' official announcement to be the next governor of Florida, get the Democratic nomination. Let's see how it goes from here. It'll be tough because there are a lot of, and I'll be respectful, you have Gail the Grifter and a lot of old Democratic talking heads that are working with David Jolly, the former Republican turned Democrat who's running for governor. Now that all these consultants who have profited on the emotions of Democrats, hoping to win the governor's office, hoping to win statewide, hoping that, like Nikki Fried did, that they could finally break that glass ceiling. But then when they finally get there, guess what? Ego goes to the head. The people forget that it actually has to be things that they need to turn out people to vote. And then we get in a situation where we just keep losing. And people get upset. And we're like, you know what, Democrat, Mamdani, he's going to do it for us. He's just going to spark everything. And it's not real. But let's get into Jerry Deming's piece before I get ready for my 12 o'clock call, y'all. I got to mute this music. Y'all trying to y'all trying to hit my damn YouTube account with this shit. Shaft? I know Jerry Demings ain't come out the Shaft. I know Jerry Demings ain't come out the Shaft.
Please be seated. Buenas noches. Bonsoir. Good evening. It is indeed an honor and a privilege for me to be here tonight. What a wonderful introduction by the First Lady of Orange County, my bride, Honorable Val Butler Demings. I like that walk-up music from Shaft, you know. Y'all know the music? That cat Shaft is a...
African Butler, how you doing? Thanks for stepping in.
I say I'm a modern day John Shaft.
Shut your mouth.
Let me make some acknowledgments. I have to tell some people thank you first. It's a sizable list, but I must say thank you. First, let me just say thank you to my entire family who are here with me. My children, my sons, my 3 sons, my grandchildren, my brother, my sister, my nieces, nephews, cousins, friends, fraternity brothers, co-workers, and a host of others of you who are joining me tonight. I also do want to recognize all of the elected officials who have been recognized at this point, but I honor them as co-laborers in public service. There's nothing like being an elected official representing the people.
I ain't gonna hold this kind of boy. I may come back to this later, y'all.
All of you for being here tonight. I say thank you to my campaign manager. You all will get to know him better, Mr. Dylan Duty. And to, yes, he'll be working. He'll be behind the scenes mostly. But also Central Florida Public Affairs for organizing tonight's event. Thank you so much as well. Thank you to Reverend Alan Jackson for that wonderful invocation tonight. I'm a man of faith, and I realize that without faith, what? It's impossible. So I recognize my family because we're all on a journey. When you decide to run for public office, it's a sacrifice. Your entire family is running for office. And because I have grandchildren, sometimes I'm concerned for them when I make the decision to run for office. I'm going to depend on them a lot to support me in the toughest of times. I say thank you to them for what they will be put through while we're on this journey. I'll talk more about the journey in just a few moments. But I'm ready. I'm ready, y'all.
Hey, there it is. I'm gonna tell you what, Jared Denver's gonna need some more energy. I can't even get through that right now.
I am excited. I am excellent. I am believing in the power of the people and their resilience on tonight, whether we look at Virginia, which when you start to talk about this redistricting scheme, or attempting to rig the next election for the midterms, because we know that the policies that Donald Trump has pushed and all House Republicans and Senate Republicans have signed on to, that have allowed us to be in this place in which economic harm is being felt by all, unless you are the top 1%ers, where we know families are being torn apart. If you tend to be maybe a little bit darker, it's so refreshing to see the people pushing back. And so while the president plays with AI videos and decides to dump poop on the people have decided that they're going to poop all over him. And so I fully anticipate we're going to have a great night with Proposition 50 here in California. We know that in Virginia, which it was a shock, about 2 weeks ago or so, maybe not even 2 weeks, they announced that they would actually enter the arms race and try to pick up some Democratic seats, with them obviously expecting to have a strong and good night. And so far, Virginia has. So hopefully after California passes Prop 50 and after we see New Jersey and after we see hopefully the retention of judges in Pennsylvania, and as we see 2 new statewide elections that were won in Georgia, in places that haven't elected anyone statewide, and I think they said 25 years outside of the federal level, I think that the people are expressing that they are fed up, and it's not even been a year.
Congresswoman, you talked about redistricting and talking about voters being fed up. There's been talk about you throwing your hat in the race to run for U.S. Senate in Texas in this midterm election. What is your response to the filing deadline is a month away?
It is looming. But if you remember, and I think you probably will, I was basically the last person to enter the race for Texas 30. But once I got in, I was in and we ran hard and we were able to pull off a win in that primary. And so right now, I think that it is important for me to really get a pulse of the people. I think that we do have an opportunity, but number one, Kim Paxton has to be the nominee. That's just what it is. We need Kim Paxton to be the nominee. We know the National Republicans estimate that it will cost them approximately $250 million to win this election if Kim Paxton is the nominee. And so one of the reasons that I want to hold off a bit is number one, I want to see if the trend continues to hold, that he may most likely be the nominee. Number two, I think that if we continue with the same electorate that we've had for the last 30 years in Texas, that we probably should expect the same result. I think that we've got to do something different. We've got to be able to expand the electorate. And so we are about to be testing.
I think you only expand the electorate by giving people something to vote for. If people weren't impacted by SNAP, if they aren't impacted by Medicare or Medicaid, or even the government shutdown, and you're speaking about issues that they don't care about again, they're not going to vote. I don't think that you can bring in a new electorate into the process if they have not really heard shit that's going to get them off their couch to go vote. Remember, voting needs at least 7 touch points. Cell phone, mail, TV, text message, social media, and maybe 2 other people knocking on your damn door, right? Yard sign included. But all that put together, it's like, in order for people to get engaged, those 7 points didn't work for them last time. Didn't work for the election before that. So there has to be something to engage people and talk about issues that they actually care about. If not, they're not going to show up. I don't think that you can just go say, hey, yes, this new electorate, and we're going to go say the same things we said to everybody else, and they're going to come out to vote for us. I don't think that's a realistic strategy. Well, I think a realistic point is, excuse me, didn't mean to burp in your face. I think a realistic point is, okay, what are people actually struggling with? Is it groceries? Is it rent? Is it insurance? Is it childcare costs? Is it the cost of breast cancer examinations, those follow-up examinations? What are those things that you can actually go fix? I think a part of it is, and even with Mamdani, we saw him speak earlier a little bit about, getting people who have experience with de Blasio and previous mayors and other things. It's like, after a while, You got to realize that your promises you make on the campaign trail aren't going to equate to actual policy or legislation that trickles down to actual people being impacted, businesses growing, closing, the rest of that stuff, right? So until you get a point of actually moving some stuff that the actual person, average everyday person will care about, they're not going to give a fuck to vote. Remember, again, I said it a little while ago, 40 million people lost SNAP benefits. How many of those 40 million people, when you take out seniors and children, of course, did not vote? And when you get to maybe 20 million people who didn't vote, again, who went and decided to go get their SNAP benefits, they're the ones that we need to go talk to bring to the elected the table to go vote, because it's like, okay, cool, you didn't care enough for Kamala or Trump. You're one of the 90 or 200 million people that didn't vote. So what is it that we can say to these 90 to 200 million people to say, you know what, I give a fuck this time? I think that's the only way you get people to the table.
In a very different way. We just went through some things and we're going back and forth with the team that we have that's going to be doing that. But we're trying to see, can we really expand the electorate? And the final point that I'll make is that typically in Texas, we've had amazing candidates. And I honestly have nothing bad to say about any of the candidates that are running for U.S. Senate right now. But what we typically do is we spend $100 million just so that people can learn their name. And basically they end up spending all their time on the phones, raising money, and then running ads just where they're getting to kind of know people's names. What I've seen in the polling is that my name ID is super high, considering the fact that I've never run.
Which is great, which also means that $100 million can be spent in field, that $100 million can be spent in actual messaging, that $100 million that Democrats can put up to fight the 250 million they're going to put up on the other side basically says that we can be competitive. We can be very competitive here because we fought the number one thing, people knowing who the fuck we are. Then it's the fact of the likability. Then it's the fact of let's play a head up game. What are the issues people care about? And only talk about those issues. End of the day, that's how you win. That's how you win an election. But she's done the first thing. Love JC, love Jasmine Crockett. She's got the name ID. Without name ID, you can't do shit.
Statewide in the state of Texas. So by the time we start, I just don't really feel like we'll be kind of at home base and up to bat, but instead we'll already be on second base and we'll be able to kind of move into the next phase of the election and really start to prosecute the case. And knowing that Donald Trump is at the helm and that whether you're from rural Texas or urban Texas, you are feeling pain alike, whether it has to do with the farmers and therefore they are losing, or a number of them are filing bankruptcy as relates to their farms, or whether we're talking about the people that need that food on their tables. Everyone is hurting, or whether we're talking about healthcare. That in rural Texas, we know that a lot of those healthcare facilities are going to potentially be shutting down because they just won't be able to sustain themselves, or whether we're talking about urban Texans who cannot afford the cost of health insurance anymore. It is time for us to point out what brings us together instead of focusing on what separates us. And I think right now, no matter if you identify as a Democrat, Republican, or independent, you just want somebody who will fight back against what's going wrong. And right now, I think it's very clear, especially with the election results that we're seeing today, that the one thing for sure that is going wrong is Donald Trump. And the one person that absolutely has a record for always being willing to call out Donald Trump and fight back is me. Well, at the same time, people
are going to want to hear what you've actually done in Congress. The resources you brought down through constituent services for people, the veterans, the people that have been furloughed, that have lost rent, that have lost SNAP, that have lost everything, to say, okay, cool, what have I been able to do outside of passing legislation? What have I been able to do to encourage people? Because I think it's a double-sided approach. You need the popularity, but you need the results. Because the popularity is like any other elected official at a state level, local level, wherever. People actually want to see, okay, what have you actually passed? And if not, then what have you actually done if the legislation can't get there? Just to be respectful, right? People want results. So at the end of the day, when they're going to vote, they're not going on the glip of, okay, we know she's just going to attack Donald Trump. We know she's going to say something about Donald Trump. They want to know that when the next government shutdown happens and they're 35, 40 days in and they need to make their mortgage payments, can they call your office in Houston, in Austin, in Dallas, wherever, and get quality constituent services? And I think a part of it is when Jasmine Crockett gets on the campaign trail and she's able to share a lot of what she's done for constituents, Republican or Democrat and other things, I think that'll pull a lot of the heartstrings of people to say, hey, you know what, I could vote for a Democrat. I'm independent. I could actually go out and vote. Or, you know what, I didn't give a fuck about the last 10 elections, but I'm going to show up for this one because she's saying things that relate. And I think that'll be powerful. But at the same time, I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket in Texas. To be fair, it's still Texas.
I must be honest. If John Cornyn is the Republican nominee, it makes it very interesting. Most people don't know that Cornyn and I work together quite often on bills. We've done stuff around food security. We've done stuff around fentanyl. We've done actually a lot of legislation together. Now, Ted Cruz and I don't work together hardly on anything, but me and John Cornyn actually work together. So it would be an interesting dynamic if it's the two of us. And then it would be a really interesting dynamic if it's Paxton.
Congresswoman Casey Stegall here. As you know, there are 17 agenda items on the ballot in Texas, constitutional amendments. And it looks as the early information is coming in that all of these are passing quite easily. What do you make of that?
You know what? I will tell you that we've seen record turnout. It looks like at least higher than anticipated turnout so far when I've looked at what's taking place in Dallas County. I'm going to be honest. I don't know how well-versed people were on all of the constitutional amendments, but what it seems like I am sensing in general is that people do not want to miss an opportunity to show up to a ballot, even if they're not fully versed. And sometimes with those constitutional amendments, as someone who came from the state house, the way that they ultimately phrase them, everything always sounds so good. It just does, right? But without having the benefit of talking to, maybe some state reps and finding out kind of the backstory and kind of the potential, some would call them unintended consequences, and some would say the intended consequences of some of these things. We'll see. But I don't know that there was a lot of campaigning around any of these amendments in the state of Texas. And I think a lot of people were just like, they said there's an election. We're really upset with what's going on. Let's make sure we don't miss the election.
Congresswoman, it's Sean Rabb, my friend. Good to see you. Let me ask you about your power and your influence. You endorsed in Texas 18, I believe, and not only in Texas, but around the country, Congresswoman, your voice, your influence has been weighing in on candidates. You talk about expanding. Is this one of the expansions to find the kind of candidates you talk about would not continue to be the quote-unquote traditional party?
A little bit, but more so just, I think that people trust my judgment. I don't think people look at me as just your everyday politician.
Of course not.
And they trust me to be authentic with them. And so when I said that, in Texas 18, there were 16 candidates. And a lot of people were like, there's 16 people. And some of them didn't know any of the people, right? But this is a historic seat. I obviously had a relationship with Sheila Jackson Lee. I also had a relationship with Sylvester Turner. And so I saw the people that they interacted with. I saw
she's not out of a job, technically.
The way that they felt.
I mean, if people want to be, oh, she got drawn out of her seat, she doesn't have a job. She's still elected until the next election. So she has a job because the people who elected her in the previous seat, the previous drawn map, she still represents them. So the map may have changed, but people haven't voted in the new map. So technically she hasn't lost a job. So I get what you're saying. Just be technically correct.
Like they needed to represent for Texas 18. And I know multiple people in this race, and I made it clear to people all around as I was down in Houston campaigning on behalf of Christian Menifee. And I said, it's not really about like who I know the best or who I like the best or anything like that. It's about who I feel like is best for this position.
Appreciate that, Famous.
In this moment, based on everything that I know. And I just couldn't think of a better candidate than Christian Menifee. And I felt like it was important, especially since this is such a historic district. And right now, as we know, Section 2 is under attack as it relates to the Voting Rights Act, as the Supreme Court is going to decide whether or not, basically the last pillar of the Voting Rights Act will stand.
And if you're unfamiliar with it, Right now, the Supreme Court is considering Louisiana versus Calais, which is essentially saying that drawing a map for a majority minority district is unconstitutional, because in West Virginia, they're not going to draw a map for white Democrats in West Virginia. So why are they drawing a black seat in Louisiana? The issue is Louisiana, by population, quote unquote, deserve a second congressional seat, which is currently there, but the way it's drawn and everything else, they're basically saying that, you know what, the white people in Louisiana are disenfranchised by this. And because of that, they're at the Supreme Court for the Supreme Court to make a decision if majority minority districts are actually constitutional. And I think the greater issue is in a state like Florida, what does that mean? That means that Sheila McCormick's seat could potentially be up. That's a Broward Palm Beach County seat. That means that Frederica Wilson's seat could also be up. That's the Miami Gardens or Miami Port seat. It's also a fact of a lot of Hispanic American seats, majority minority, will be up. So that also means that a Darren Soto seat could be up. That also means that a Maxwell Frost seat could be drawn and read up. They're going to redraw Florida. They've said that they want at least 5 seats in the state of Florida for our redraw, and our session doesn't start until January. So guess what? They said we're going to be here all summer. Most likely going to be here till June, July. But by the time they need to put these maps, I guess in the way I would say May, June, they have enough time to do it. So I would see, as the rest of these states start dominoing and redrawing maps, that we're going to be right where we at next year. So as, of course, California did theirs, North Carolina, I believe the Congresswoman said Virginia is going to redraw theirs as well. How is that going to offset by Texas did their 5, Florida's going to do theirs, North Carolina's going to do theirs, Indiana's going to do theirs. I don't think we have enough Democratic states to be factual. I don't think we have enough Democratic states to fight what we're doing. But at the same time, there needs to be a fight. But understand that we may not win. Like, by the time it all gets drawn in, they could still have majority after this because they have more states that have more control again. Like I said earlier, North Carolina, governor has control, but also realizing that the governor doesn't have, through the constitutional powers, power to veto whatever the legislature draws as the maps. That is a great political strategy that these people have run. What I have to do is actually be professional. Let me get ready to sign off here. I told you it'll be a short stream. I'll be back on tonight. I want to thank each and every one of y'all for tapping in. We've had over 44,000 people tap in, over 200 of y'all here with me tonight or right now. Thank y'all. We've hit, I think, the 8,250 subscribers, which was the goal. Hopefully we can hit 9,000 before the week's up. The goal, honestly, is 10,000 before Christmas. So if it's your first time here, I'm a professional lobbyist in the state of Florida, Philip Singleton, the hip hop lobbyist. I've been in politics for 15 years and I've been streaming since this year. I started off with 400 subscribers in April and started live streaming, created a whole vertical show straight for your phone, you know, just to connect and things of that nature. But overall, we've grown over 8,000 subscribers between April and now, just inconsistent posting, inconsistent streams. But I want to thank each and every one of y'all for helping us get to where we trying to be, right? Fully monetized. Every conversation is monetized these days. But either way, I'll be back on tonight. Over 45,000 people tapped in. Again, over 200 of y'all here right now. I just want to say,
all I ask is when you lay your head on that pillow at night, you know I gave you everything I had.
Thank y'all for tapping in, man. Make sure you like and subscribe. I'll be back on later tonight. Thank you. I'm out.